Beautiful in and out. Someone who is smart, who is intelligent. So I want like the total package.
The No Ordinary Love Podcast with Rosalind Anna. Every relationship is unique and has its own rhythm and melody. And what worked for them may not necessarily work for you. So, welcome to the No Ordinary Love Podcast. I'm Rosalind Anna. We're diving into stories of couples that redefine love. Get ready to explore the depths of true connection and learn what it means to discover no ordinary love in your relationship. So, we're here today with Dr. Femi and Dr. Bola. I just want to start with how are you guys doing? And I really mean that. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing great. It was a beautiful day today. I'm doing great.
Okay. How are you, Femi? Dr. Femi?
Excellently well. Anytime you are 6 feet above ground, it's hallelujah.
Yes, it's a great day.
Amen to that. Amen to being alive. Just happy to be here today for sure. So I'm going to start with kind of each of you individually a little bit first. Dr. Bola, who were you before you met Dr. Femi? Like, what was going on in your life? Where were you in your life at the time that you met him?
Before I answer that, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking that, actually. I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Today was an exciting day because I was looking forward to this. The other work that I do was hectic, but this was like the cherry on top of my day. Thank you for asking that.
Good,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of who were you before you met Dr. Femi, and what was happening in your life?
Awesome. I was a single a single lady figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. Before I met him, I was in college at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I was a super studious. I was engaged in a lot of my religious activities. I attended a local church at that time where I served diligently. I was trying to map out my social life to my friends and what type of activities I wanted to do in my free time. Like, is it volunteer? Is it, go out partying? And just really balancing those things out. So I'm also a daughter. I'm a sister. And just all of those things in general. So that's really who I was before I met Dr. Femi. He was Femi at the time.
So that means your relationship has grown and evolved over time, for sure, for it to be now Dr. Femi at this point in time. But it sounds like you were figuring out life. You had lots of interests going on. You had your school, you had your church life, you had being a friend, being a sister, and all of that kind of informed who you were at that point in time. And I would say then to you, Dr. Femi, where did your love story with Dr. Bola begin? Kind of what was the inception of that love story for you from your perspective?
It began in college. Even though we didn't attend the same college, I went to Morgan State University. She attended UMBC. I was a party promoter while I was in college, and we had a mutual friend that connected us together. I was on the phone with her friend, and I heard her voice in the background, and I was drawn to that angelic voice. And then I asked the mutual friend to put her on the phone, and we talked for a few minutes. She asked for I asked for her number. She didn't give it to me, and she asked for my number in return, which I knew she was just playing a game because I could figure that out a mile away. But I did give her my number. She did not call, just as I expected, and I had to now slide into her DM on Facebook. I had to go find her on Facebook. Bola, UMBC. And lo and behold, I discovered her on Facebook and sent her a message, and life began from there.
So you like online stalking before like online stalking. That was like your first side hustle that you had.
Yeah, I was talking her online. I meant business. I was focused.
W- What was it about her voice though? Because just someone's voice in the background. What was it about her voice that drew you into her? I'm just curious about that.
Well, I think in retrospect, I will think, the voice is nice, the voice is beautiful, but I think naturally and spiritually, to be spiritually conscious, I feel like God had a role to play in that because the voice was magical, the voice was irresistible, the voice it was like somebody just calling you and speaking to your soul,
Mhm.
and I was just
Wow.
drawn to it. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
And she
So,
was singing in the background, as a matter of fact. And it's not
ah,
like she's a singer in church
mhm.
Or in life.
or in life. And I'm a musician, so I have ears for singers. So that's why I said it has to be spiritual intervention to some extent.
You know what you said is really interesting to me because she's not really a singer, but then she was singing, and you're a musical person. So I think that's where using faith, since you're both people of faith, that's kind of where God sent His message through the language that you speak, which is music, by having her sing in that moment. Because I believe that things happen when they're meant to happen in the way they're meant to happen. And I just find that a very, very interesting coincidence. Dr. Ball, what was it about when he slid in your DMs that did you take him seriously, or were you just like, oh, who's this party promoter person that's trying
Yeah.
to
So I'd
slide in
already
my DM?
heard about him. And if, like 15 years ago, if you were in Baltimore between like UMBC, Morgan, Coppin State, if you were like in those neighboring universities, you probably have heard of him,
Mm,
GFM. So I already knew who he was or heard about him and wanted nothing to do with him because of what I heard. And it really just was okay. Maybe if I'm interested in going to a party, I could really, be interested in talking to him. But at that time, I actually had never been to a club
mm,
at that time. So it just wasn't resonating. So when he slid into my DM, I wanted to go out and like he was speaking a language that, or he was speaking in terms that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting him to invite me to a party or
mm,
trying to like hit on me or like, you know how those like
mm,
guys just they're trying to waste your time.
mhm,
And he was speaking like serious, like like he was very persistent. He was very um he was making effort. And that's when I started to be like, okay, like why me type of thing. We went on our first date.
mhm,
Um Months after that, sliding into DM, we went on a date to Bob Evans. It
mm,
was in the evening, I remember, after class. And interestingly, during that date, he goes, like, literally in the middle of it, there's no trigger, nothing. He just goes, you're going to be my wife. And I'm
wow.
like, all right, where's the exit so I can run out of here? Where is the door? Because this guy is nuts. This guy's crazy. We didn't talk for like an extended period of time after that. It was just like off. Like
Mm,
he was very like, you're my wife, you're the one destined for me. Like he was very serious. And I mean, he's 4 years older than me. So you
mm,
can imagine the gap at that time. Like marriage was not my priority at all. I just wanted to finish school and get a great job and move on with my life. And here's this guy who's notorious in Baltimore for throwing parties, wanting to marry me. So it was an instant dismiss. That this cannot be real. This cannot be serious. Um, so yeah, that's how I felt.
Okay. So it seems like at that point in time, you that was just not your mind frame. And like he took the relationship way further. Like it was way more serious than you thought it would be, especially from this party kind of guy in the area. So what made you so persistent to pursue her, Dr. Femi? Like what was it about her? What were her qualities that made you as persistent as you were, given the short amount of time that you had started to know her in the area? Because clearly you were the popular one. It sounds like she wasn't as popular or as known.
Yeah, she's different,
Mm,
and she has a unique life that was different from the other girls that I have encountered in the past. Her way of life was not a party girl. The girls that I knew, they were into clubs, into going to parties almost every weekend. She was more studious and she was more into church. She had different, I want to say, different organizations or different departments that she was involved in with church, like protocol, dance, and I was drawn to that. I wanted a church girl or a girl who at least has some spiritual inclination. Yes, you can still be social butterfly to some extent, but I still want someone who is grounded spiritually because I grew up in church. Even though I was out there, throwing parties, I was still involved in church. I was a youth want to call it youth pastor. I was the drummer. I mean, I was really active in church. So I kind of had that balance of social and spiritual life going on. So I wanted someone who is more of that to some extent, but more on the spiritual side. Somebody that, when it's time to pray, let's pray. And when it's time to say, let's hit the club, you're ready, get your freakum dress, let's go out and pay the town rent. So I
mhm,
kind of wanted that, and somebody who is beautiful in and out,
mhm,
and someone who is smart, who is intelligent. So I want like the total package. And
mhm,
unfortunately, the girls that I was meeting, they didn't have that total package. So I
mhm,
was drawn to that, and then beyond that, I was later on convinced by the Holy Spirit that that is your wife. So
mhm.
it's the combination of what I was looking for on my checklist, plus God saying that's really who your wife is. That's somebody that I've ordained for you. That's your rib. That's your twin, pretty much. So that's what it is.
Yes. So it was ordained for you. This is who God said that was your rib. But let's be practical here in like clearly you were out there, you were in the clubs, you're attracted to a certain kind of woman, and you're used to a certain kind of woman before this. So what is that transition like in wanting something serious with her, but in being who you are as a man from a very practical standpoint, not just from a spiritual standpoint? How do you make that transition from there to wanting something serious the way you're saying?
It was a tough transition, as a matter of fact. It wasn't easy because once you are used to something, it becomes an habit or a lifestyle. So
Mhm,
to now change something that you are constantly doing every weekend or that you are engaged in such activity for years, to now say, I want to change my lifestyle for somebody, who is that person? Who deserves this total transformation? And I think I had to be practical in my reasoning to say, okay, whatever I'm doing now, the social lifestyle, is it sustainable? Is this something I want to do for the rest of my life? Okay, that's the first question. If the answer is no, then when do you want to stop? At what age? At what time do you want to put an end to it? And if it's not now, do you think if it's later, this girl will still be waiting for that later time? It's something that you have to make that decision now. And if you make that decision now for this girl, is she worth the sacrifice? Because sacrifice means you are letting go of something for something else that is more important. So is she more important than the party lifestyle, than your shenanigans? Is she worth it? Then if she's worth it, then why not do it now?
Mm-hmm.
Why not let go of that?
So, Dr. Bola, what was that process like for you? Meaning, like, clearly, I don't think Dr. Femi just, like, there was a switch and he just turned, and, like, the next day he was the person, the Dr. Femi that we're seeing today. I'm sure it was like a process
Yeah.
to get to being the man that he is today for you.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what was that process like? What were some of the challenges that you faced, and kind of what kept you going in this process to be 15 years in at this point in time?
So after we had, made it official, February 14, 2008 was when we made it official and said, yes, we're going to be dating. That's, for most couples, that's probably where what do they call it? A honeymoon phase, and you're just in love. For us, I feel like that's when the trouble started. So we had been friends. We had been friends for probably a year or two prior to that, and just from the first date that didn't quite work out. So we kept in touch. We were still friends. He would still invite me to parties. I would, gist him on what's going on in my life, like the kind of guys that I'm talking to or that was trying to take me out. He would do the same. So we were like just friends. And then he made the interest, clearer at that time. And I already got to know him a little bit, not just the G fem that we all saw, but the true Femi. I always tell him that there's a difference. There's a major difference in the two. So when we started dating, he still had a hard time plugging away from G fem, right? He wanted to be Femi when he was with me, but I would not allow. I have really high standards. And I would not just allow him to be whatever he wanted to be with me and go out there and be somebody else. So we had a lot of issues with infidelity. We had a lot of issues with just lies and deceit, and telling me he's somewhere but not quite there. He's with another girl, or and I think it's just like that whole package of being a promoter. I'm not going to speak with it for every single promoter out there, but
What? Wait a minute. It's not infidelity.
Oh, sorry.
Because infidelity would
is in marriage.
Yeah, you cheated while you're married. So
what is it called?
It's fornication.
Okay.
So for you fornicate when you're not married.
Okay.
Yes.
So fornication.
So for your listeners. For them to understand.
Let's clarify.
Let's clarify. So that you're like, oh, so you cheated while he was married?
Yeah.
No,
not when we were married.
When we were dating, that's what she was saying.
Yes, when we were dating, he was still engaged in an entanglement with
very, very appropriate today. Being entangled.
Right, with other women. And here I was, really wanting. I mean, at this point, again, like he said, we both have that spiritual background and values. We hold very strong to them. We prayed about it. We knew that we really wanted to be with each other, and that most importantly, that God wanted us to be with each other. But unfortunately, the actions that he would engage with, I was getting calls every single day from different women. Hey, I slept with your man. Hey, your boyfriend was just at my house. Like different things with receipts. Sometimes it was pictures, sometimes it was text messages. I would confront him about it. Sometimes he would tell me the truth and apologize, promise it would never happen again. Sometimes it would be in denial or just be like, I didn't do it. So we went through a couple of years of that. Um, I held on for a couple of reasons. And before I have to finish the entire story. So I held on for it because you asked. I held on for a couple of reasons because number one, at that point, I truly, with every fiber in me, loved him. I never loved anybody else the way that I loved. I never knew anybody else and spent time and effort into a relationship the way that I did with him. Secondly, at that point I've seen signs, I prayed, I've heard from God that he was the one. But it was really challenging that you heard that clearly, but then his actions were conflicting. So it came to a point in our relationship where I called I called the entire relationship off. I'm just like, I'm tired, I'm done. Um I will call his brother because he respects his brother a lot. And at that point, like he already introduced me to his family. So it was like it was real. It was a real thing. But it's just like what I had with him when I'm with him, when I'm with his family. It's real, but then 24 hours later, I'll get a text message from Shanae telling me that she was just with him. Again, the stories weren't matching. So I called his brother with him and I just said, you know what? I just want to have a witness. I'm really sincerely done with this. I, wish you all the best. We would break up. He would come like begging, like I promise I've changed my ways. I've done this, I've done that. And I remember one time, I was exhausted. I don't know like who might be hearing this. When a woman in a relationship and you just tired of going through the same thing. Like I made up my mind. I said, God, you know what? If you created Femi for me, I know that there's somebody else out there that you can make for me. But this guy, this can't be him. He came, same thing, apologized again. The time when I really took him serious, when I knew for sure that this is it, he took a bold step, even though he had been the youth leader at his church. He had been very committed, he was a drummer, but he finally gave his life to Christ. And he did it openly. He did it unexpectedly. He did it like it's not something we discussed. It's something that he just willingly, I believe God really touched his heart to do. And that's when I believed that the change really came. And thinking about it in hindsight, I don't believe that there's a way. Maybe now there's like therapy. Therapy wasn't as popular back then, but now that there's more resources to help people in that situation to get better, I didn't believe that that he could actually do it himself. Because sincerely, he really wanted to. Like his apologies are so sincere, they're heartfelt. Like I believe it, and I know this man, so I know he's telling the truth. But somehow it was almost like an addiction. If people who are addicted to something, if they don't go to rehab, they're just going to go right back to it. And that's what was going on in our relationship. The day he gave his life to Christ, October 1st,
Yeah.
I mean, since then until now, I think that was about 13 years ago. We've been living our marriage like literally no hints, no nothing, no source of signs of infidelity, no infidelity at all. Like the things that he was struggling, that we were constantly fighting and arguing over. All of a sudden, he gave his life to Christ. And I know it sounds like crazy, like really, that's it. I strongly believe that God created all of us and has the key in His hands to change our hearts, and I believe that's what God did. And that day, I cried, you know, cry of joy, of happiness, because I just felt convinced that finally that God had heard. And guess what? Right after that, there were more text messages. There were more calls. But at that time, though, there was no more proof. Do you get?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
I hear you.
So I knew for sure. There was actually one girl who called me maybe like 2 or 3 weeks later. She was like, I was just with your boyfriend and we did this and we did that and I have pictures. She offered pictures. I was like, great, send them. I even though I believe in my heart that he had changed, I'm like, maybe he went back again. Who knows? But let's just see. I mean, it's not new. It's not strange. I've gotten calls like that before. I'm telling you, till today, I've not received those photos.
Mhm.
And not only that, like, I believe who I was with. I believe, what he was saying. His actions match his words. He became more transparent. Baby, here's where I'm going. So he became more accountable, not just like wander off and like he'll be giving me stories later.
Mhm.
And that was when we were able to move forward in terms of, now formalizing things and saying, okay, we want to get married.
Okay, so it sounds like you, as a person of faith, you as a woman, you had your standard of what you wanted your relationship to be. And it was very, very painful to see him kind of go back and forth between GFem and Femi. But at the same time, the only thing you could do was hold your standard as to and express that to him as to what it is you wanted. And you even got to the point where you were almost uh, like willing to give up. You went to his brother and all that. But at the end of the day, you felt like he had an encounter through his faith that changed him.
Yeah.
So what that tells me, definitely in a faith perspective, I take that in to put it to the audience where some people are like they may not have that faith perspective. At the end of the day, he had to do his own work or decide within himself.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that you did per se that changed him. On some level, he had to within himself decide that this is different, or God had to work on him from the faith perspective that I'm changing today. And that's kind of how he made the change. Dr. Femi, how would you describe it from your perspective as far as like what helped you make that shift from GFem to Femi that she was describing?
I think it's a
And
combination.
do you agree with her story? Because you don't have to
Oh yeah,
agree with
yeah,
hers.
of course, of
Yeah,
course.
no.
It's a correct story. It's accurate,
Hmm.
and for me, combination of two or three elements kind of helped me to transition
Hmm.
from GFM to Femi. One is giving my life to God, October 1st, 2010,
Hmm.
and two is actually somehow I had it's almost like a spiritual encounter, but also more of a epiphany of what my action of being a promiscuous young man, what that action was doing to her. Like I had a sudden realization of it. I was doing it so many times. I was apologetic. I would say I'm sorry, and I really meant it every time that I was on my knees begging her. I meant it, but it's almost like she said, it's almost like an addiction, even though I don't I don't want to call it an addiction, right? But it's because it's interesting how you, for real right now, to say, yes, I'm done with this. And
Hmm.
then a few days later, you pick it up again. It's so, I can see how we can use the word addiction, even though at that time I wasn't thinking that it was an addiction. So for me, I had that sudden realization of what that action was doing to her and what I got from it, which I believe it has to be some spiritual intelligence. The way God helped me to realize it was basically I was holding her hands and I was putting her hands into fire. And she doesn't have the strength or the power to take her own hands from the fire. I have that power. So as I was putting her hands into fire, she was crying because of the pain, because of the heat of the fire. So that means to explain that, it's like me holding her hands is me fornicating.
Mm-hmm.
Her being in the fire is her going through the pain of the fornication. And the reaction of it is her crying. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the metaphor that God gave to me, that this was the effect of your action. This is that fornication, this is what it was literally doing to her. And she has no power to stop it because I was the one doing the act. And I don't want your listeners to be like, oh, but she could have walked away. Yes. But in this sense, I was the one doing the act. So I
Mm-hmm.
was the one putting her into that mess, into that situation.
You
Right.
were
So
inflicting pain on someone you loved, and that pain was coming from you. Yet at the same
it's,
time, you keep saying you love her. You keep saying, I'm changing. And you're the only one who has the power to stop it, right? And I
yeah,
think, like you rightfully pointed out, it's challenging because you're fortunate, rather, because she still held on for you to be able to kind of get over to the side of the relationship that you guys had. Did you ever think, what if she just walked away?
I mean, she tried to walk away many times. I kept running back. I kept playing my game, kept running back.
That juice.
I did not walk away. I ran away. I ran.
You kept saying, no, 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 I don't want this bad boy. I said, yeah, right. What if you don't want this bad boy? But to be honest, no, she left so many times.
Mhm.
I kept going back, going. I remember one day. Oh my goodness, I was like, this is it. I knew this was the last straw. Like she was done. She was done. And I went to our apartment. I was talking to God and God, please, just please talk to her for me, please. Like I knew I had no, there's nothing else I could say. Like I've said so many, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. I mean,
You
I've
got
said
run out
so
of game.
I've run out of games. Like there is nothing. I need another intervention. Like somebody stronger than me that who knows her and everything what it could do to just touch her heart. I'm like, God,
Mhm.
please, just please, just please. I mean, that last day, I just cannot forget that moment. So I'm fortunate to still have had her, and so it's a fortunate situation. I know a lot of people may not be that fortunate. So
So it sounds like this was kind of like the foundational challenge of your relationship. What would either of you say you learned from that, and how have those lessons showed up in your relationship going forward to what it is today? Like how did that inform the next 13 years of your relationship? How do you feel that did?
I think it's tough, and if I'm being honest, it's
Mm-hmm.
been tough because once you have a foundation like that, it's like a crack, and it takes time to build on it, to repair it, to mend it. And you can't just say it's gonna go away. It's a crack on the wall. There's something fractured right there. And you can fix it, but it's not just gonna be smooth. It's not gonna be a smooth wall. So there's still gonna be scar right there. But the good thing is you have to make the beauty out of your scar.
Mm.
You have to allow your scar to remind you of what you've been through and what you survived. Not allow the scar to plunge you and to make you miserable. The
Mhm.
scars are not there to make you miserable. The scars are to remind you that you were tough or you were even tougher than the situation and you survived them. Hallelujah. Keep it
Yeah.
moving, right? So, of course, it has affected our relationship one way or the other. It
Mhm.
spilled into some other situations that I'm like, how does that one connect? What
Mhm.
happened many years ago has no bearing on this. But she can say, no, it has bearing on this. This is the connection of it. And in that moment, I have to acknowledge it and be accountable and be to re-apologize again
Mhm.
and to reaffirm her that,
Mhm.
look, for decades, over a decade now, or 15 years or 13 years, again, since 2010, I've never done anything like that. I
Mhm.
gave my life to God before we got married. I've never cheated. I've never, done anything of such nature. So I have to keep reminding her and keep reassuring her. And sometimes, devil tries and make you remember things of the past that
Mhm.
will still be hurtful. But then you have to again think of it that the devil may remind you of it or you may be triggered of it, but it is not to say that you've not overcome it.
Mhm.
The
I
memory is still there.
I think what's amazing in what you're saying is that um you still stand in a position of being apologetic for what you've done even when she's triggered by it years later, because as someone who may have created an offense in any relationship, you can't tell the person who's been hurt by it when they should stop being hurt. You kind of always have to be apologetic about what you've done and allow that person to heal at their own time. But I think that in the same token that something like this can be so painful, would you say, Dr. Bola, has there been anything, what are not anything, because I believe there has been, what are the good things, what are the ways in which your relationship is more resilient? What are some of the positive effects of having started your relationship in such a fundamental way that created cracks, like Dr. Femi said?
It's brought a lot more goods than bad. Thinking about it, I'm confident anywhere to say now that my husband is 100% loyal and committed. I know that God has helped him to be able to build his resilience and endurance to be able to withstand temptation. It's by the grace of God, but I know that because of what we've been through, and because we were at a point where he saw himself what he was about to lose, the type of marriage he could have had, the type of woman, like he's always said, he has everything that he's ever wanted was in me, and vice versa.
She's my all inclusive one.
That's right. All inclusive. I love
And
that.
us getting to a point where he was about to lose all of that, and to be honest, I didn't care anymore at that point. So him now knowing that, and knowing that at any point, and I didn't forget. I forgave. We moved on, but once in a while, we still talk about it. I did not forget, and he knows that if I'm ever in that situation again, I'm going to be strong and make the best decisions for me. Whether that means walking away and finding peace, because that's just something I'm not willing to. I've already endured enough. At such a young age, I was just in my early 20s at that time. And still trying to figure out everything else in my life and handling problems at that time that I would say that adults, I'm thinking like adults are like 30s, like people who really have some like real life problems to deal with. I was dealing with that. Now some women in, 10, 15, 20, 30 years of marriage are still dealing with their wives, with their husbands, cheating on them. That's what I was going through late late teens and early 20s. So it's built our relationship so strong that we trust each other. We know that, okay, if I know that if my husband go and he travels a lot for work, and so do I. We both know that no matter what, I mean, again, with the grace of God, that we can overcome temptations. We know that we are 100% um transparent with each other. If there's anything at all, we don't keep any kind of secrets. We're like best friends, literally best friends. If there's any kind of situation that I'm experiencing, my husband is the first person to know about it, and vice versa. So it builds. Yes, it was a crack, and like my husband said, sometimes you have to turn a crack, something so ugly, into something so beautiful. It's helped us manage better and foster better relationship with God. Before we did it separately because we weren't married. Now we get to do life together in Christ, as a couple. And so it's sprung out some of those beautiful um, elements. We've also, now that we have children, we're instilling in them what it means not to hurt people. How it may not always be cheating, but how to live a life of integrity. And as a couple, we have our relationship ministry. We're able to impact other couples that are going through what we've gone through. We're able to teach them and share with them our story of how we overcame, and at the same time giving God the glory. And in the last decade or so, my husband has really delved deep into what it meant to really fully transition into being a faithful man, and developing practical tools that at that time those resources weren't available to him, but now he's spent time. He got a whole PhD in it on how to really help marriages and help families, with all types of issues. And you probably would agree with me that infidelity is probably maybe top 5 or top 10 of what married couple experience. So we've been able to use our background and those cracks and those ugliness to create light and create something so beautiful to help continue to help ourselves and others out there.
Like, there were just so many gems in what you said. This kind of crack, this foundational issue has created so many beautiful things in your life. First of all, I love the wife plug. I see how you were plugging your husband. That's cool. That's so cool to see. Like, not only did it inform, excuse me, just a second.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you. I have a cold, but I was like, we're doing this today no matter what. Let me just drink some
Oh, I'm
water.
sorry. Yeah,
It's
grab
okay.
some water, please. We'll do the same.
Here.
Yeah, water break.
Yeah. Okay. We'll cut all this out. But
No
oh
problem.
wow, let me get my voice back.
No, take your time.
Yeah. Okay. So I love the way that you plugged what your husband does, and which is kind of how I can't even remember how I met you guys per se. I think we met through a mutual friend, but then in a way he's taken this really painful experience and made it a big part of his life with all the relationship work that he does for other couples and that you both do for other couples as well. But it's a testimony for you in your children, which I think is so amazing, because what we don't heal, we pass on generationally to our children. The lessons we don't learn, we then force our children to have to learn those lessons, because they're learning from our example. They're never learning from what we say. And them having the blessing of just seeing you both in such a healthy relationship, but a healthy relationship where you overcame things. Because I think sometimes there's this perception that the right relationship is just perfect and they don't have any problems or anything like that, and it just doesn't exist. I think the really beautiful relationships are where you're able to overcome, like you guys have, challenges and get to the other side. The tricky thing, I think, though, is knowing when to let go and when to kind of hang in there, which is what I'll ask you again. I think I kind of asked it before, but like maybe talking to someone else, because you said you guys have a ministry. How do you know when you let go and when you just, when you have a Dr. Femi and when you don't have a Dr. Femi, right? When you have a Dr. Femi now,
Okay.
now transform, because not everyone does
Yeah.
transform.
Sometimes I tell him that if we're both in our 30s now, he's in his late 30s, I'm in my early 30s.
That's right. No, you're 25. What you mean you're in your 30s?
But I tell him that if we were just dating now, that would we get married? Would we? And if we're going through what we went through, over a decade ago, would I have enough patience to say, you know what, let me still build with this man? Or would I have walked away a long time ago? One thing that kept me going, again, I heard, and God speaks to me very clearly. I'm used to God talking to me about things that don't, like things that most people probably won't even ask God for. Sometimes if I'm like, okay, God, I want Chick-fil-A or I want Panera, which one? They're on opposite sides. Like I will hear it, So I'm used to hearing, like, running God. I mean, running my decisions by God or some of my options, and so who I wanted to marry was no different. um Especially when he was so persistent, and we had started to gotten to know each other. At that time, I heard from God, I had 100% conviction that he was the one. So in the back of my mind, while all those escapades were going on, I still knew that, like, I mean, even though I doubted, like, God, are you sure? Like, is this really the person? Because of his actions at that time, right? So even for the non-Christian and not the non-faith-based people, I would still stand by that, because that's really one thing that kept me going. And sometimes in life, when the going gets tough, when you look back and figure out what your why is, you have to know your why. And that was my biggest why. Because everything that we have now, and to God be the glory, we're in a beautiful, peaceful marriage, that I did not envision, to be honest with you. I did not know. I told him on my wedding day, I was confident that he was the one, but I did not know 100% that this is what I was going to walk into. I didn't know everything to expect. I don't know if anyone does, but I didn't know maybe year 6 he was going to cheat on me again.
Yeah.
I just went by faith and knowing that, God, if you said it, then he's the one, I'm going to go with it. Again, though, with the changes that I started to see, and not just with cheating, the partying, the clubbing, naturally. And I mean, people come to me all the time, like, especially women, like, how did he just stop? Did you tell him to stop? I did not, because outside of having a good time, that was also a source of income for him at that time. So I would not tell him, hey, stop doing this, just because of me. But if this is the life that you want to live, though, you can't. I don't subscribe to that. I want to spend my Friday nights either at home or at a movie somewhere, or having fun at a restaurant. I don't want to be in the club with sweats and my ear, like, I that's just not me. And I went to the club a few times with him, so it's not like I'm judging or anything like that. It's totally a vibe. It's just not my vibe. And I made that clear to him. This is not the future that I want for myself. And at that point, I knew what I wanted my relationship to look like. I had great examples around me, of people that, I could say, okay, I like how this type of marriage works, or I don't like that. So I had examples, both good and bad, around me. So I was able to really figure out like what I really want. And I'm a pretty decisive person. I know if you tell me A or B, I can tell you quickly. Sometimes I need to sleep on it. Sometimes I need to hear from God clearly, but I can tell you exactly what I want.
Mhm.
So all of that just combined together was really what kept me going. But my biggest why was because I heard it clearly that he was my husband.
Yeah. Your faith is why you were able to discern that he's the one for you. I can't believe we've been talking for almost an hour. I could like talk, this is like my thing, so I could talk about it forever, but I
Um,
want us to kind of go to some kind of rapid fire questions. I have 4 questions. I'm going to ask each of you 2 questions each. Um, and just answer it with the first thing that kind of comes to your mind. And I'll start with Dr. Femi. Um, what is your favorite thing about Dr. Bola?
Loyalty.
Okay. Um, Dr. Bala, how do your children or family or your community, what do they get to see because Dr. Femi and Dr. Bala are married?
whew, that's not a quick answer.
You can expound. You can expound.
You gave him an easy question. They
Well,
see, and I
we know who's better in this relationship. That's why.
hope that they see God's goodness.
Mhm.
I hope that they see joy and happiness. I hope that they see encouragement. That, and a lot of our families were plugged in, like they knew. Like I said, I call his brother's attention to what he was doing, just in case they didn't know. But it wasn't a secret even back then. Like our families knew our foundation. They knew he was at the club Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. So them know, like they've seen us grow, and not just him, me too. I've grown so much in the last decade, a little over a decade. So I hope that they see that who you are today is not necessarily who you have to be. So whatever it is that we need to work on as human, that you can get to that next better version of you if that's what you want. If you are even in career, we've both grown in pretty much everything. I mean, we literally didn't have kids 13 years ago. Now we do. So everything has grown, and we hope that people see that and know that no condition is permanent. I will say though, I'll say this, that as long as there's no like physical abuse,
Yeah.
because I don't want to send a message to women that just keep staying until like you know until just whenever. I feel like there's a lot more resource, there's a lot more help now that there was back then. So it's okay to get help. It's okay to speak to a counselor. But I hope that people see not a perfect marriage, but a healthy marriage that is worthy of being emulated, and also that they see I keep saying the light, because there's something about when there's light present, you can all see there. It brings warmth, it brings comfort, it brings so much to our lives. So I hope that when people look at our marriage, they're able to see all of that and wanting to either have something similar or something even better.
Mhm. No, I definitely see that. And I don't think you sent the message that there is no limit. I think you were very clear that there is a standard for this relationship. And like you rightfully said, there's so many more resources now, such as the resources Dr. Femi provides and resources of a therapist in general. There are many resources now that people can avail themselves that can help them make a decision whether to stay or to go. So Dr. Femi, what is the best thing you'll say your relationship has created, that both of you together in your relationship have created?
I'll say we've created I don't know if this answers that, but I'll say progress. I'll say,
Please expound a little bit
yeah,
then.
I'll say if we put a magnifying glass on our relationship,
Mhm,
we'll see a lot of transformation
mhm,
individually and together. Like we've done work, personal development, growth individually in different areas, not just one area,
mhm,
not just about your health, about your mental health,
mhm,
about your physical health, financial health, spiritual health.
mhm,
Like in so many areas, we've done so many work. And I think if I were to just augment that a little bit, I would say the power of agreement
mhm,
that we both have as being a testament to that progress.
mhm,
To be able to agree and to be united in one mind and say, this is what we're going to do, this is what we need to do, and this is what we ought to do, and we are going to move forward with this. I think that has made a total shift in our
mhm.
relationship.
Okay. Now I have to ask another question because you said something really interesting to me. We've talked a lot about how you had to change, but how has Dr. Bola changed for you in this relationship? Meaning, like, what has her own personal growth looked like? You've had to do a lot of difficult personal growth, but you can share a quick story about in a way where she's a different woman today than the woman that you married because we're always growing and shifting and changing as people.
Yeah, I think she's grown two ways. She's grown in her understanding of relationship, of the challenges that relationship can bring, and the challenges that I can bring as a man, and how I think differently, operate differently, and how she's supposed to relate to me.
Mhm,
I think she's grown in that area. And I am mostly enamored and grateful for this second part, the spiritual growth. Because I'm telling you right now, without the spiritual growth, the physical growth that she has
mhm,
encountered would not manifest without the
mhm,
spiritual growth.
mhm. Yeah.
Because there are times that challenges, problems, chaos can tame your knowledge, your intellectual knowledge, your understanding of marriage. But when you now have a spiritual power that is operating on you, will tell you that says, look, forget this problem, forget what you know. Let me deal with the situation.
Mhm,
I've done some stupid things in the past that it's only God's intervention
mhm,
that really helped. It's not about what she knew, it's God's intervention.
mhm,
It's God really speaking to her, really saying, just calm down. You don't see, don't, you are not seeing this whole picture completely. There are times God will say, look, let my son go. Just let him go do what he needs to do.
mhm,
Let him go work on this. There are times that maybe I needed to go preach. They asked me to come and preach somewhere. And because she may not want to be in, it's now she's evolved into speaking. Before she didn't want to speak. Before she didn't want to talk about relationship,
mhm,
right? And it's God who speaks to her and gives her that insight. Like, look, let this thing happen. Just, in so many ways, that there's so many examples.
mhm,
So, and I'm saying these because for the listeners to understand, you may not be a spiritual person, but I'm gonna encourage you that begin to walk in a spiritual journey. I don't know who that your God may be, but you need to connect to a higher being that knows more than you know and that sees everything, because you are limited. Your vision, your thinking, your ideas, your understanding, your knowledge is minute as compared to somebody who created you, who created the person you are dating or who you're going to marry, and who sees your future that you cannot see. So it is important to have a higher being that you can submit to, that you can listen to, and that you can trust, even when you cannot see the whole staircase.
Yeah. Not everything is logic. There's some things it's just faith and it's just your belief that's going to take you through in a relationship. If you're going to leave it to logical thinking, you're going to give up many, many times and not get to the beautiful kind of relationship that you guys have. So, the last question, Dr. Bola, what is your best hope for the future of your relationship?
Ooh, I hope to grow old with this man forever and ever. We're just getting started. Like he said, God has really done work on us as a couple and on me too, especially when it comes to the area of this the whole marriage thing. It's a lot. And just some things we're still trying to figure out. Some things, God is teaching us. But as we know that God is whatever we're giving, too much is given, much is expected, right? So we're also walking that journey of sharing our story. If you had reached out to us like this time last year, he wouldn't even tell me, because I'd be like, nope, I'm not telling no stories. I don't got nothing to say. Like, don't even worry it. But God has worked on us to the point where I see the value. He's made me understand. That's what he was trying to explain. He's really made me understand what marriage is all about. And it's not just us. Yeah, yes, we're the only two married in this union. However, our marriage is a message for others, for the world. So I hope to do life with him. I pray to do life with him for many, many, many years to come, to where at least 120, by the grace of God.
Amen.
Yes.
um So, how do people get in touch with you? We didn't really talk about this, but if you want to share a little bit about what you do outside of your work, or just a little bit about your professional lives, or anything you want people to know about you, how they get in touch with you or interact with you out there in the world.
Yeah, so we have, you can follow us on Instagram, or on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're everywhere. It's Doctors, DRS, Femi and Bola, that's FEMI, and AND, BOLA. You can send us an email, doctorsfemiandbola@gmail.com. My husband is a full time marriage counselor, relationship expert. He's an officiant, licensed officiant. He's literally everything that you need. If you need cybersecurity trainings, he's got you. Professional trainings, he does this like literally day in day out. I'm also I work with them on the management of marriage ministry, and just really hoping to impact the world together.
Yes, and my wife, she's a wedding planner extraordinaire.
I was
It's
about to interrupt her and be
top
like, why?
top, and it's interesting how God pieces that journey and my journey together,
Mhm.
because she can plan the wedding for the couple, I can counsel them and officiate them.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting relationship, if you
Mhm.
want to call it. And we just bless God for what He's doing
Yeah.
and what He's going to continue to do. And there's a lot of plans ahead. We have a couples retreat coming up in February. 10th to 13th to celebrate Valentine's for couples that want to really share their journey with others. And they also want to learn from other couples that will be there and want to have a quality relationship, not just with their partner, but with other couples that are on the same path of journey.
And want to have fun.
And they want to have fun. Because, yeah, I tell people, I said, when it comes to me, I'm a combination of two things. We're going to learn and we're going to have fun. Those two things got to go hand in hand. If you just call me that you're just going to have fun, I'm not that. If you call me that it's all about learning, I'm not that. The two combination, bring it on. Let's go.
Fun and learning for sure.
But and learning, yes.
I just think it's interesting. She talked about all the things that Dr. Femi does, but she didn't talk about her own stuff that she does. I was going to interrupt you if you didn't say something, but your Dr. Femi got you, so even better. So I just want to thank you both. It's been such an interesting conversation. We've just learned so much. I have to I can't even summarize everything that we've learned from you, but I think what I'll say the most impactful thing is how your faith has guided you through your entire relationship from the beginning till now. That has just been such a central part of your relationship. And I think it's important to point out how Dr. Femi even took responsibility ultimately for his own actions, and God helped him see that his actions were causing a lot of pain for Dr. Bola and helps guide him through how to make that transition. And Dr. Bola also growing to understand the value in their own union. I think that's amazing. Those are some of the big themes that I picked up and I learned. I'd be curious to hear about what you guys learned about it. But in closing, I just want to thank you all for joining us on the No Ordinary Love podcast. It's been a pleasure to share the incredible story of Dr. Bola and Dr. Femi and the connection of love that they have. I want you to remember that every relationship is unique and has its own rhythm and melody, and what worked for them may not necessarily work for you, but it's definitely a guiding light. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that are inspiring. And if you love today's episode, subscribe and leave us a review. And until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
He'll stop the